Tonight I'm going to give a brief report. I say brief report, we'll see how brief it is. But I'm going to give a report on the work that we've participated in the last few days from the 14th of January to the 22nd of January. We returned into Atlanta on Friday afternoon, and it was somewhat a lot of turbulence and difficulty in landing, and it affected my hearing. And shortly after I was on the ground and back in Warner Robins, and maybe before, I felt like I was down in a barrel as I was speaking. And unfortunately, as I speak to you tonight, I still feel like I'm down in that barrel. My hearing is not just right, so that kind of affects some things for me personally. But if you can't hear me, I'm not speaking loud enough, you need me to speak up, let me know, because I'm having difficulty gauging my sound. As we think about the work we participated in Costa Rica, the 14th through the 22nd, I want to make the point that together we make a difference for both now and eternity. Together. A lot of different people were involved in making this campaign a reality. I'm thankful to Mark Bass, who led our mission team, this effort. And Mark Bass and his wife Joanne made this trip. He is the preacher for the Grove City, Ohio church, not too far from Columbus, Ohio. He is the one that got me started going out of the country some 10 or 11 years ago on mission trips. This is something like my 5th or 6th trip to Costa Rica. I went a couple times with him to India, and I appreciate his willingness to allow me to go again on this trip. I was unable to go last week because of health reasons on the part of my mother. But also, Phil Greer is Mark's sort of right-hand man. Phil and his wife Darlene, he preaches for the Springfield, Ohio Church of Christ. Gerald, or Jerry Reynolds, preaches in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And he is a faithful gospel preacher as well. Also, Danny Bainbridge from Fairmont, West Virginia. He is a civil engineer. And he preaches through the years. He has preached on a number of occasions by appointment, fill-in, and so forth. And he preached on one occasion during the course of our time in Costa Rica. Another gospel preacher is Jonathan McAnulty. My first time to meet him, and also Danny, as well as Travis Main, his son Sterling Main. Travis is a preacher. Tim Gaynor, also from Rio Grande, Ohio, is a preacher. Most of these fellows were from Ohio, friends of Mark Bass. And Tim and I, we shared a cabin together in both in San Jose on the return home and there in Sarchi. So these are some individuals, some 11 of us from the United States that went on this trip. And of course, there's others but you here in the States. Obviously, I could not have made this trip on my own without your assistance. And I appreciate so much the support on the part of the eldership here in allowing me to go, your encouragement, and the financial support of this church, and the moral support as well. The mission team, here's a picture on Sunday evening in Sarchi, our group together, along with one of the translators and the preacher there in Sarchi. Also, the mission team included a couple of individuals that I was not really expecting to meet on Thursday evening. We left the course of the States on Thursday morning pretty early. We flew out of Atlanta about 8:50. We arrived in San Jose about 1:30 or so. And we obtained our luggage, went through customs and all, and we made our travel about an hour or so to our mission destination. We got something to eat and got in there in time to get a little bit of rest before going to the evening service at Sarchi. But Mark and Sheila Shelton from near Cape Girardeau, Missouri, a little community called Fruitland, Missouri. Mark and Sheila Shelton are part of a group from the church in Fruitland that have been supporting the work in Sarchi for about 5 or 6 years now. It's a small congregation, relatively speaking, about maybe 50 to 60 individuals in Fruitland. each summer, about at least 2 or 3 families or so, maybe as many as 10 to 12, at least on occasion, have gone over to Sarchi to conduct Vacation Bible School there. And so Mark and Sheila have been involved for 5 or 6 years in the work at Sarchi, and they had not been participating before in a campaign such as ours, where we go door to door out into the village, out into the community to invite and set up and conduct Bible studies. And so they wanted to come and see. They made a special effort to come and be with us. They arrived in Sarchi on Tuesday, and they stayed there in Costa Rica until Monday morning when they had returned to the States. But it was a pleasant thing to meet this fine couple, Mark and Sheila. And it just so happens that they know some of my family by marriage near Jackson, Missouri. Also in Costa Rica, and this is not an exhaustive list, but there were some individuals that traveled from various congregations in Costa Rica itself. They came to support the effort to go out with us door knocking. One was Juan Assis. He preaches for the Lord's Church on the eastern coast in Limon, Port de Limon. First location I had the opportunity to go 8 or 9 years ago, 9 or 10 years ago. And he is the preacher there now. He is a very faithful and dedicated servant. One person was remarking concerning him that he just wouldn't leave until someone would agree to study with him. So he was very, very diligent in his efforts to obtain a Bible study. Also, another individual, I picture him later, a man by the name of Teo, who came to both locations and worked with us. He is the preacher for the Lord's Church in Gracia. And translators, Anders was my translator. He is a 21-year-old son of the preacher and his wife that lived there. I'll show a picture of them in just a few moments. But the preacher, Rodon, and his wife had 4 sons. And I was totally impressed by this whole family. And Anders worked with me both in Sarchi and later in Naranjo. And really got close to this young man, fine young man. When I left, people were talking about leaving, how they felt close to folks. And I told them I felt like I was leaving a son behind. Another one of our translators was a man by the name of Noel Morales. He and 2 or 3 others were from Nicaragua. Noel was from Managua, traveling some 8 to 10 hours by bus to come and to be with us. Also, Conrad Pender Hines from this country of Panama to the south. This was my second time to meet him 2 years ago when we went to La Fortuna. He was my translator there, and just thoroughly enjoyed working with him on that occasion. And one of the other brothers, Danny, had requested some 6 months ago to work with Conrad, and so he got first dibs on Conrad. And I told one of the brothers that I could have requested him 2 years ago, and I chosen to do that, but I didn't. But Conrad is a fine interpreter and does a great job. Also, along with Walter Brooks, he is now preaching La Fortuna on occasion, not every Sunday. He's another one of our translators, and I've known him for some period of time going over into Costa Rica. Another translator is a man by the name of Manuel Lopez. Another was Agner Sosa, also from Nicaragua. And then there was Hainer, and he is the preacher for the Lord's Church in Bagaces. And I was quite impressed with this young man, Hainer. I have a picture of him a little bit later. But he's a young man, very diligent, very studious, great defender of the faith. He lives some 75 to 90 miles from the location where he's working. He's living with his parents because of a lack of monetary support. There is hope that in the future, over the next year or so, he can get the support that he needs so that he can reside in the city of Bagaces itself. And there's some possibility that one of the campaigns next year that Mark may possibly lead a group to Bagaces up in the northwestern part of Costa Rica. Gilbert Astorga is another great leader in the Lord's Church in Costa Rica, and I've known him since I've been going over there. He was quoted as being, or someone said of him, that he is, to them at least, the Apostle Paul of Costa Rica. He is a man who has great sphere of influence among the Lord's church in Costa Rica. He was able to come in and out. He was able to stay the whole time. He was involved in another campaign, and he was with us most of the time when we arrived in the second location of Naranjo. Here's a picture of the preacher, Rodon, and his wife. Rodon on the left and his wife on the right. And Noel, one of the translators in between the two of them. Here's a picture of Danny and Jerry. This was one evening after service. Here's a picture of Mark and Joanne, along with Walter and his new wife, Mildred. Walter married a few months ago, maybe about a year now, and certainly congratulate him. I asked him one day, I said, if they were standing there together after lunch, and I went by, passed by Walter, and I said, Walter, I said, what do you have to say to get this young lady to marry you? And they both laughed. Here's a picture of Travis and his translator, Noel. Noel did a great job translating for Travis. I believe one day it was said that they had about 12 studies in one day. So, but apparently they weren't all that lengthy to get that many in. Here's a picture with Tim Gaynor, one of the preachers from Ohio, and Agner, his translator. Here's a picture on the left, from left to right, Painter, Gilbert, Walter, Manuel, Noel, and Agar. Here's a picture of Mark and Ezekiel, myself, Noel, and Jonathan, one evening after service. Here's a picture of the couple from Fruitland, Missouri, Mark and Sheila Shelton. I wanted to share with you as well. They were willing to go out with us through the course of the day. While we were there in Sarchi, they joined the campaign. They went with us. They knocked doors, and they engaged in Bible studies along with us. Here's a picture of the preacher Teo from Gracia. He was speaking to me and others while we were there. Please come back. Come back maybe next year and lead a campaign. Here is Hader, the young man I was speaking of a moment ago from Legasis. It was a pleasant surprise, I guess you might say, to see that they were using PowerPoint at Sarchi. There was one of the opening or welcoming slides, the Church of Christ, Sarchi, and they were able to put the Spanish songs on the slides for the singing each service. The singing, I don't know if you've ever heard, which I think maybe last year or a couple years ago, perhaps I played some of the singing, recording of that. And I find the singing in Spanish so beautiful. The buildings both were very fit for the acoustics and sound very beautiful. The churches in both Sarchi and Naranjo are small, about 25 to 35 people on any given Sunday. Here's a picture of the preacher, his wife, his family there in Sarchi. And there is David on the left, and Anders, and then Jordan. These three young men participated very heavily in the devotions in the mornings, leading songs, leading prayers. Again, very, very busy, very involved, helping in any way that they could to advance the cause of the kingdom there. And the younger son. Here is one of the evening services in Sarchi. As you can see, there was a good crowd. One evening had many, many visitors from the community to come and be with us. We were grateful for that. The evening worship, we had a campaign consisted, I can't have myself here, but we worked in Sarchi and Naranjo, and each evening we come together at 7 p.m. or shortly thereafter, They're not quite as time conscious as we are here in the States, but there was a number of lessons that were preached during the course of the evenings from Thursday night in both locations. And here's 2 or 3 of the titles. We preached some fundamental lessons. Why we preached baptism for the remission of sins was one of the topics that was addressed. Another that Mark dealt with was the undenominational nature of the Lord's Church. One of the lessons dealt with why we observe the Lord's Supper on each first day of the week, and then why we don't use mechanical instruments of music in Christian worship was the topic that I was assigned and spoke in Naranjo. Again, from Thursday to Sunday, we worked in Sarchi, and from Monday to Thursday, we worked in Naranjo. Not mention that, again, the Church in Fruitland, Missouri is sponsoring, or a major sponsor of the work in Sarchi, while the 7th and Mueller congregation in Paragould, Arkansas, supports the work in Naranjo. Here's a picture in Naranjo of the preacher and his family. His wife is Karina. He is Eddie Cordova, their son Caleb, and daughter Dara. Eddie led singing most of the evenings during the service. There was another fellow that led some. This particular fellow here, Bainell, I may pronounce his name correctly, but this family is one of the leading families in the Lord's Church there. Gabriella and Bainell Corrales, and their son and daughter. And this man, Bainell, is the son of a lady, and I'll show a picture in just a few moments, but back in 1960, there was a missionary that came from the States to Costa Rica. And there was a lady and her husband that were converted at that time. And they're still faithful members of the Lord's Church in Naranjo. And they are founding members of the Lord's Church there, and very important in leading that work along with the preacher and family. On Tuesday evening, I had the opportunity to preach. Enjoyed that opportunity as Noel interpreted for me. I thought that Conrad, I had prearranged incidentally with Conrad that he would translate for me. And we talked about that for at least a day or two. And, a preacher, I guess, typically doesn't like surprises. But I walked up the steps and came across the way. And before I got to the pulpit, I turned back in your direction to look. And I saw this orange shirt coming my way and the green shirt coming down the aisle. And the green shirt, Conrad, he took 3 or 4 steps. He turned and went back to sit down. I had a new translator, somebody I didn't know I was going to have. So it was interesting there for a moment, but we made it fine together. Appreciate his good work. While we were in Sarchi, Anders was my translator, and his girlfriend from San Jose was able to work with us on Friday and Saturday. And then after we came to Naranjo, this young lady from the church there in Naranjo joined us. And so it was Angelica, myself, and Anders. And we worked together, going out door knocking, walking down the dusty roads, working together. We walked a good distance, a good bit. We had 3 vehicles that were transporting us to locations, but having about 25 to 30 people, a vehicle is not always available. And so we walked quite a bit to the doors that we were seeking to meet people. And sometimes after we would conclude our work, we would, rather than wait for the band to come, we would just take off walking. Under my influence, we would walk back to the building sometimes, maybe as much as a mile or so. So enjoyed the opportunity to walk and exercise. Early in the week, it seemed that we didn't walk that much because everywhere we were going, they would take us on a study. And we would, visit study for an hour, hour and a half each time. And so early on, we weren't really doing that much walking, but as time went along, my phone, my tracker, logged 3 miles, 4 miles, 5 miles in a given day. But here is a family that we came in contact with. This was one day we went door knocking, and this was the first door that we knocked. And here's a picture of Dylan, Myra, their grandmother, Sophia, and Naomi. These young children were very attentive. To be so young, it was quite amazing for them to stand around their grandmother and to sit there on the floor and to listen to the things that were being spoken as I taught for something like an hour to hour and a half. And Myra, she listened very carefully, very intently. And when you're out door knocking and studying with people and you invite people to come to your services, naturally, you are thrilled when they accept your invitation. And this family accepted our invitation, and here they are on this particular bench on one given night in Sarchi in worship. And I had the opportunity to sit with them through worship, and it just thrilled my heart. There was 4 people that came to be at the service that night, and after the service, took a little picture with the 3 children. I thought I had another picture there. I guess I made it somewhere else, but they were in the van and smiling, and just it's amazing the connection you can make with people in a short period of time. I believe this was on a different day. It could have been the same day. Don't think so. I think it was a different day, maybe the next day. Outdoor knocking, and a woman comes to the door, this man's mother, and she is unable to stay and study with us. She says, I must go, but I would like you to talk to my son. My son is, he's not religious, he's not really a believer. I would like you to study with my son. So we studied with her son for a good period of time, maybe an hour or so, and these children being nearby. Anderson is the young man, Edgar the son, and his daughter is left, Rachel. And it was quite amazing to me that they asked for us to come back. Could you come back this afternoon about 4 or 4:30 and study some more? Well, anyway, that's getting close into dinner time for us Americans. But I said, okay, we're going to go study. That's more important. So we go study, get over there. Actually, it was a little bit earlier than that. It was around 3:30 that day, I guess. 3:30, and we studied for about an hour and a half. I go back, and you see this family here. Edgar's mother is there, along with his brother, and his wife, and his sister-in-law, and these children. And it was almost overwhelming to sit there in the den, and this whole group, some 11 or more people, sitting across from me, sitting to the side, standing in the kitchen, all these people listening as I had the opportunity to teach for about an hour. This study went on till about 5 o'clock in the evening. And I was just thrilled to have that opportunity. This woman was very interested in the things that we were having to say and wanting to influence her family for good. And so I mentioned about the 4 that night that came that thrilled my heart. Here was 11 at 5 o'clock in the evening, and at 7 o'clock, 7 of them were at the assembly. I was thrilled for 7 members of this family to be in the assembly. Edgar, Rachel, Anderson, his wife, Laura, his mother on the back row there, along with 2 younger children. 7 souls in the assembly to hear the Word of God preached. But not only so, but the following day, Edgar and his 2 children and his wife returned. He came at least 1 or twice more to the service, and very hopeful that something may come of that. The fruit will be born from the seed that was sown. Here is a young man that joined our team Travis's son, Sterling, a young man, maybe about 16 years old. He led singing some. He spoke in one of the devotionals one morning and did an outstanding job. And so young people can go out of the country and make a difference for good across the water. In Sarchi, the ladies there took excellent care of us, feeding us at the noon meal. We had a fellowship meal on Sunday as well. And they did a wonderful job taking care of the camping workers. Here is the lady I was speaking of earlier that was converted in the 60s. And I'm not exactly sure on the pronunciation at this point of her name. Anais, I'll say, but just threw in her heart to serve. And we were there in Naranjo Monday through Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. For 4 days, this lady prepared, she did the cooking. There was others that assisted her, at least in transporting and while there at the church building. But it's my understanding that this lady here prepared food for something like 25 to 30 people those 4 days. And certainly be commended for her heart, for her desire to serve. You can see smile on her face. It's her son. I showed you a picture of earlier of, and her daughter-in-law, her grandchildren. She has 3 or 4 children that are faith members of the Lord's church. She has 2 sons and a daughter that were there in the assembly, or maybe that second was a daughter-in-law. Here is a picture one day as they were serving us. Karina, the preacher's wife, Anus, and Gabrielle serving us, taking care of us. Here's a picture earlier in Sarchi when Andrew's girlfriend was still with us, Amanda. Here is one of the ladies that we studied with by the name of Anna. Had a good study with her for a period of time. And probably not living in a good situation. Here's another lady that we studied with, I believe, on Saturday in Sarchi by the name of Maria. We were studying with her. We were standing on her front porch teaching for a period of time. And she said, got my attention to look up. And I looked up and the light was swinging. And my interpreter said, tremor. And so there was a minor earthquake while we were there, but no cause for major distress. I kept preaching. Here is another lady that we studied with, Olga, a Catholic background. I might mention that there in the area we were working at least, Catholic Church is quite dominant, along with the Pentecostal groups and the Jehovah's Witnesses. So these are some of the groups that we dealt with as we met people door to door. But Olga was a lady that we studied with. I can't remember if it was on Saturday or Sunday afternoon. Maybe it was Sunday afternoon. Had a good study with her. And we taught her things that she put it, I've never heard this before. I was taught this from my youth. My grandmother taught me about Mary, taught me about these things. And I've heard these things all my life, but you're teaching me things I've never heard before. Seed was sown. Here is a family, kind of a sad situation, housing that we ran into, and we knocked some of the doors. At least this is not the only door we had the opportunity to knock. Some others knocked the other doors. But here is a family. They were waiting for their family that were out in the fields, out on a plantation, picking coffee beans from Nicaragua. They're migrant workers. They come on a seasonal basis, and they'll be returning to Nicaragua. And they had a Pentecostal background. And we had the opportunity to teach her about the Lord's church for a period of time. And again, seed was sown. I don't know what the result of that could be, but we try to do our part. Here is a man, Jose. He lived in New Jersey for some 3 years. He is now back in Jose. He returned because his mother was in failing health back a few years ago. He showed me some pictures of him. One picture standing in front of the World Trade Center several years ago. Had an excellent study with this young man. This man and his son, who sat there in that seat for quite a while, he finally dismissed himself to join his friends. But this man, Jose, he listened very intently to us teaching the gospel for over an hour, maybe an hour to an hour and a half. And I guess of all the studies that I was able to conduct, some 13 studies while we were in Costa Rica, I enjoyed this one the most. Everything you seen was clicking, if you know what I'm trying to say. Everything was coming together, memory was working well, and I tried to impress upon him the need to obey the gospel. We had come that far in a period of time, and it was this may be the only individual that I really tried to impress that upon because I felt like we need more study, we need more time. But this particular fellow, I felt like that I had him on the edge of the water. But he wasn't quite ready. He wanted to wait. And he put off that decision. He promised that he would come back next tomorrow, 4:30, and we'll study some more. Return the next day, and he had to go to work. He said, I want to come to church tomorrow night. Come pick me up. We returned to pick him up, and he said, I've been out playing soccer with my buddies, and I'm just worn out, and I'm going to be unable to go tonight. And it was disappointing. He and so many others that we talked to, or at least other of my co-workers would say, disappointed, so-and-so promised me that they would come tonight, and they just didn't show. So Jose, I hold out hope for him. The seed was sown. We taught him the Word of God, and he said, I'll be there on Sunday. I hope he was. Here's a group of young people that allowed me to be in on their little selfie. Wendy and Tracy and Naelis. And they're all from the church, I believe, in Gracia. And so they were coming from a distance to help this campaign. I don't think I have another picture of Tracy there. It's to my right. But Tracy, we really formed a bond at Sarchi. And the evening I was preaching on Tuesday night, I shouldn't tell this, because I've already struggled. But Tracy, I'm sitting on the front row. It's like 5 minutes from time to preach, time to service. She comes up on the front. She says, Timothy. And I said, 2nd Timothy. There was another Tim Gaynor. They called him 1st Timothy because he had 2 or 3 years on me. So he was 1st Timothy and I was 2nd Timothy all week long. And so Tracy comes up and she says, Timothy. And I say, 2nd Timothy. And she says, but you're first in my heart. I had to get up and give her a hug. This is a picture of Anthony back in Sarchi. He was baptized into the Lord's family. This young man is really ill. He was coming out of a denominational group, perhaps the Jehovah's Witnesses, and he has an autoimmune disease. And after this, he had to go into the hospital, to the ER at least, and he is very, very ill. And so thankful he obeyed the gospel. So while we were there was Anthony was baptized. We had 2 restorations, 2 young ladies on Sunday morning made their need known to be restored to the Lord's church. In both Sarchi and Naranjo, we conducted, our team did, 131 Bible studies. So we sowed the seed. That's what God asked us to do. The sower went forth to sow. We sowed. Seed fell on different types of ground, different hearts. But we trust in His time that God will give the increase. Together, Together, we can make a difference. God working in us and through us. The power of God, the power of the gospel to transform the lives of men and women and young people. Thank you for allowing me to go. For the blessing that I received. And thanks to Betty for her sacrifice, for her willingness to spend a few days alone. But she wasn't alone. Thank you for seeing to her, checking on her, making sure she was okay, that she had what she needed. Thank you for loving us, supporting us. Let's work together to make a difference in Warner Robins, in Georgia, and across the world while there's time and opportunity. Tonight, are you a Christian? Do you have the hope that the gospel provides through Christ? Tonight, if you're outside of Christ, if you're lost and undone because of your sin, you can be forgiven. This morning, Brother Wayne read from Jeremiah 31:31 and following concerning the promise of God to take a new covenant and the promise that He gave that your sins and your iniquities I will remember no more. What an awesome blessing that is. To be forgiven, to be cleansed by the blood of Jesus. What a friend we have in Him. All our sins, griefs, willing to bear. Tonight you'll come confessing your faith in Him. You'll come repenting of your sins, confessing your faith, being baptized into the Lord's body. Tonight you can experience the greatest joy known to man. If you've erred by the way, you need to come back home, to be restored to your first love. Tonight is your opportunity. Tomorrow may be too late. Would you come while we stand and sing?